Just wanted to share some notes I made from a book by Florence Scovel Shinn. It's her collective works, and it's quite interesting. So the first chapter is called The Game of Life and How to Play It. Most people consider life a battle, but it's not a battle, it's a game. It is a game, however, which cannot be played successfully without the knowledge of spiritual law, and the Old and the New Testaments give the rules of the game with wonderful clearness. Jesus Christ taught that it was a great game of giving and receiving. You don't have to be religious or anything to understand this and accept it. You know, people are very good at receiving and taking, and people do like to give, but it can be very transactional, can't it? Like, you give something and you expect something in return. You might be good at taking, but truly receiving something without any pride about, oh, I must pay you back. You know, receiving with grace can be quite difficult. Whatever man sends out in the word or deed will return to him. What he gives, he will receive. If he gives hate, he will receive hate. If he gives love, he will receive love. If he gives criticism, he will receive criticism. If he lies, he will be lied to. If he cheats, he will be cheated. Yeah, I have hated people, but I'm hoping that I haven't shown it. I do assume that other people hate me too, so maybe that's my comeback. You know, I don't think many people know how to love properly. That word love is thrown around all over the place. You know, the true definition of love is to put someone else's needs first, even to the detriment of your own. And no one does that really. I'm not sure I would. So, yeah. And criticism. I've dished out a lot of criticism. You know, I definitely am a flaw finder and a problem finder, which I don't like about myself. I'd rather be solution focused. And I've received a lot of criticism from other people. So, yeah, maybe that's my karma. Keep thy heart or imagination with all diligence, for out of it are the issues of life. And this means that what man imagines or images in his head sooner or later externalizes into his affairs. And she goes on to write that she knows a man who feared a certain disease. It was a very rare disease and difficult to get, but he had pictured it continually and read about it until it manifested in his body, and then he died. He was the victim of distorted imagination. And although that sounds like quite a ludicrous story, you know, I believe that could be true. I've pictured negative and positive things in my life, and I think they've pretty much usually materialized in some way, shape or other. So yeah, and you know, in modern day, there's things all over the internet about manifesting ideas of what you want in your life. So there's no reason why it can't work the other way around. If you're constantly worried about something, it's probably going to happen. She goes on to say, many people have brought disaster into their lives through idle words. For example, a woman once asked me why her life was now one of poverty and limitation, when formerly she had a home and was surrounded by beautiful things and had plenty of money. We found she had often tired of the management of her home and had said repeatedly, I'm sick and tired of things and I wish I lived in a trunk. She added today, I'm living in that trunk. She had spoken herself into a trunk. The subconscious mind has no sense of humour, and people often joke themselves into unhappy experiences. That's quite a scary idea because I say a lot of things out of humour. I've joked about being like an old lady, and I am like an old lady now. Like, everything clicks and makes a noise, and joints aren't like they used to be. So maybe that's me joking themselves into an unhappy experience. And then she goes on to say, for example, a woman who had a great deal of money joked continually about getting ready for the poorhouse. In a few years, she was almost destitute, having impressed the subconscious mind with a picture of lack and limitation. Fortunately, the law works both ways, and a situation of lack may be changed into one of plenty. For example, a woman came to me one hot summer's day for a treatment for prosperity, and she was worn out, dejected and discouraged, and she said she only possessed $8 in the world. And I said, good, we will bless the $8 and multiply them, just as Jesus Christ had multiplied the loaves of bread and the fishes. For he taught that every man has the power to bless and to multiply, to heal and to prosper. She said, what shall I do next? And I replied with, follow intuition. If you have a hunch, go and do it. Do you have a hunch to do anything or go anywhere? Intuition means to be taught from within. The woman replied, I don't know. I seem to have a hunch to go home. I've just enough money for the car fare. Her home was in a distant city and was one of lack and limitation. The reasoning mind or the intellect might have said, stay in New York, get work, make some money. But I replied with, then go home. Never violate a hunch. I spoke the following words for her. Infinite Spirit, open the way for great abundance, for she is an irresistible magnet for all that belongs to her by divine right. I told her to repeat this continually also. She left for home immediately. In calling on a woman one day, she linked up with an old friend of her family, and through this friend she received thousands of dollars in a most miraculous way. She has said to me often, tell people about the woman that came to you with $8 and a hunch. I really like that story. I used to joke about being homeless because, I became unemployed, so I joked about becoming homeless and living in a tent. And now I joke about becoming rich. So I'm hoping that happens and I become rich, because I haven't become homeless. So that was good. Maybe I stopped joking about it just in time before it happened. Yeah. I tried to practice some affirmations and manifestations of myself. Bless people for something positive, even if it's just timing in showing me how far I've come. Bless money to multiply so that I can give more away to charities. So those are the types of affirmations I'm going to start making. Yeah, and I guess it has kind of worked, because even though I am unemployed and poor, I do donate small amounts to charity, like £10 here, £5 there. And when I did need money a long time ago, some did arrive in a miraculous way from a random person. So yeah, I think it does work. So she goes on to say, it's a man's only enemy, fear of lack, fear of failure, fear of sickness, fear of loss, and a feeling of insecurity on some plane. Jesus Christ said, "Why are you fearful, O ye of little faith?" We can and we must substitute fear for faith. Fear is only inverted faith. It is faith in evil instead of good. The object of the game of life is to see clearly one's good and to obliterate all mental pictures of evil. This must be done by impressing the subconscious mind with a realization of good. A very brilliant man who has attained great success told me he had suddenly erased all fear from his consciousness by reading a sign which hung in a room. He saw printed in large letters this statement: "Why worry? It will probably never happen." And those words were stamped indelibly on his subconscious mind, and he now has a firm conviction that only good can come into his life, and therefore only good can manifest. Let's break all the old bad records in the subconscious mind, the records of our lives which we do not wish to keep, and instead make new beautiful ones. Speak these words aloud with power and conviction. So I would want to speak out loud that I'm going to prevail and I'm going to do well. I now smash and demolish, by my spoken word, every untrue record in my subconscious mind, and they shall return to the dust heap of their native nothingness, for they came from my own vain imaginings. I now make perfect records through the Christ within, the records of health, wealth, love, and perfect self-expression. This is the square of life, the game completed. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. And I really like that. I think that we can talk ourselves into bad situations and bad feelings and depression and all of that. Whereas if we constantly, consciously put effort into only speaking positive, then positive things will happen. So I'm going to try and do that more often. Okay, next chapter. The law of prosperity. Words and thoughts are a tremendous vibratory force, ever moulding man's body and affairs. A woman came to me in great distress and said she was going to be sued on the 15th of the month for $3,000. She knew no way of getting the money and was in despair. I told her God was her supply and that there is a supply for every demand. I gave thanks to the woman that she would receive the $3,000 at the right time, in the right way, and I told her she must have perfect faith and act her perfect faith. The 15th came, but no money materialised. She called me on the telephone and asked what she should do. I replied, "It's Saturday, so they won't sue you today. Your part is to act rich, thereby showing perfect faith that you will receive it by Monday." She asked me to go to lunch with her to keep up her courage. When I joined her at the restaurant, I said, "This is no time to economise. Order an expensive lunch. Act as if you already received the money." The next morning, she called me on the phone and asked me to stay with her during the day, and I said no. You are divinely protected, and God is never late. In the evening, she phoned again, excited, and said, "A miracle has happened. I was sitting in my room this morning when the doorbell rang, and I said to the maid, 'Don't let anyone in.' The maid, however, looked out the window and said, 'It's your cousin, the one with the long white beard.' So I said, 'Call him back. I would like to see him.' He was just turning the corner when he heard the maid's voice and he came back. He talked for an hour, and just as he was leaving, he said, "Oh, by the way, how are your finances?" And I told him I needed some money, and he gave me $3,000. I won't receive the money until the 1st of the month, but I must have it tomorrow. I said, "The spirit is never too late." I gave thanks that she received the money, and it will manifest on time. The next morning, her cousin called her and said, "Come into my office this morning, and I will give you the money today instead." That afternoon, she had $3,000 in her bank account, and she wrote the checks as rapidly as her excitement would permit. It's a very lovely story. I hope that it's true. I can believe that it possibly could be. If one asks for success and prepares for failure, he will get the situation that he has prepared for. That's quite interesting because, the modern phrase is prepare for the worst and hope for the best. Maybe we shouldn't be doing that. Maybe we shouldn't be preparing for failure because we will get the situation that we've prepared ourselves for. For example, a man came to me asking me to speak the word that a certain debt would be wiped. I found out that he'd spent his time planning what he would say to the man when he did not pay his bill, and this was neutralizing my words. He should have been seeing himself pay the debt. We have a wonderful illustration of this in the Bible relating to the 3 kings who were in the desert without water for their men and horses. They consulted the prophet Elisha, who gave them this astonishing message: "Ye shall not see wind, neither shall you see rain, yet make this valley full of ditches." Man must prepare for the thing he has asked for when there isn't the slightest sign of it in sight. For example, a woman found it necessary to look for an apartment during the year when there was a great shortage of apartments in New York. It was considered almost an impossibility, and her friends were sorry for her and said, "Isn't it too bad you will have to store all your furniture and live in a hotel?" She replied, "You needn't feel sorry for me. I am Superman and I'll get an apartment." She spoke the words, "Infinite Spirit, open the way for the right apartment." She knew there was a supply for every demand, and she was unconditioned, working on the spiritual plane and at one with God. She contemplated buying new blankets when the tempter had the adverse thought of reasoning mind and suggested, "Don't buy the blankets. Perhaps after all you won't get the apartment and then you will have no use for them." She promptly replied to herself, "I will dig my ditches by buying the blankets." So she prepared for the apartment, acted as though she already had the apartment. She found one in a miraculous way, and it was given to her, although there were over 200 other applicants. The blankets showed active faith. The ditches dug by the 3 kings in the Bible were also filled to overflowing. Getting into the spiritual swing of things is no easy matter for the average person. The adverse thoughts of doubt and fear surge from the subconscious. They are the army of the aliens which must be put to flight. This explains why it is so often darkest before the dawn. A big demonstration is usually preceded by tormenting thoughts. Having made a statement of high Oh, I can't understand that. I think I've missed a page. Anyway, yeah, I think it is quite good to act as if, but it does kind of feel a bit cocky to act as if, and then you'd look like a right idiot if it didn't materialise, but I guess that's all part of having faith. Acting as if, but not in a stupid, over elaborate way. What's next? A keen observer of life once said, "No man can fail if some one person sees him as successful. Such is the power of the vision, and many a great man has owed his success to a wife or sister or friend who believed in him and held without wavering to the perfect pattern." So it does help to have people believe in you. Yes, that's very true. The next chapter is the power of the word. The horseshoe or the rabbit's foot contain no power, but man's spoken word and belief that it will bring him luck create expectancy in the subconscious mind and attracts a lucky situation. When a man has advanced spiritually and knows of a higher law, it doesn't work to trust a lucky monkey instead of God. So yeah, I don't think we need to get rid of all the horseshoes and lucky gemstones and all that kind of stuff, but it's important to understand that by using these items, they just create an expectancy of luck in the mind, which helps us with our faith. But once we have advanced spiritually, we need to be putting all our faith in God and not in a random item. There are not two powers, there is only one power, and that power is good. Therefore, there are no disappointments or evil. If you are afraid, you are giving into a belief in two powers, good and evil, instead of one power, which is God. There is no opposing power unless man makes the false evil for himself. If one is willing to do a thing that they are afraid to do, they find that they end up not having to do it. It is the law of non-resistance, which is so little understood. Someone has said that courage contains genius, and magic face a situation fearlessly, and there is no situation to face, and it falls away of its own weight. Okay, that's quite interesting. Curses are like chickens. They come home to roost. If a man wishes someone bad luck, he is sure to attract bad luck himself. If he wishes to aid someone to success, he is wishing and aiding himself to success. The metaphysician knows that all disease has a mental correspondence, and in order to heal the body, one must first heal the soul. The soul is the subconscious mind, and it must be saved from wrong thinking. So yes, I am very guilty of wishing bad things to happen to certain people that I don't like. So I probably need to stop doing that, because I'm probably just going to get those bad things happen to me. So yeah, that is one of my many character flaws. The desire for revenge, resentment, and all of that kind of stuff. So I'll stop doing that from now on and only wish good to happen to people. I have started doing that actually. When I do have a resentment towards somebody, I do actually get onto my actual knees, which creak and hurt, and I say a prayer asking for that person who I don't like, asking for that person to have health and wealth and happiness and all the things in life that I want for my life. And I don't really mean it when I'm saying it, but if I keep saying it every day, eventually I notice that I do mean it and that the resentment has gone away. So it does work. Asking for love or goodwill fulfills the law for love. Oh, I can't understand what that says. Asking for love or goodwill fulfills the law for love is the fulfilling of the law, and disease which comes from a subconscious resentment is wiped out. That makes no sense. Continuous criticism produces rheumatism. That makes sense. As critical, inharmonious thoughts cause unnatural deposits in the blood, which settle in the joints. False growths are caused by jealousy, hatred, unforgiveness, and fear. Every disease is caused by a mind not at ease. I said once in my class, there is no use asking anyone what's the matter with you. We might as well just say, who's the matter with you? Unforgiveness is the most prolific cause of disease and will harden the arteries or the liver and affect the eyesight. In its train are endless ills. This is very old kind of American English, but I think I understand it. So asking for love or goodwill fulfills the law of love. I understand that. So by doing that, asking for love or goodwill, any disease which comes from a subconscious resentment will be wiped out. That's good to know. And yeah, I mean, there are various books out there, modern books. I'm thinking about Gabor Mate or Mate, I don't know how he pronounces his surname. He's done various studies and written books about the link between emotions and physical ailments, emotional struggles and physical ailments, and how they link together, and how like struggles in life emotionally can cause like autoimmune conditions and stuff like that. So, you know, modern thinking does prove this. And this book that I'm reading now, by Florence, Scovel, Shinn, was written in the early 1900s. So that's quite interesting that they were already thinking about this and believing in this. So yeah, I do kind of believe that continuous criticism can produce rheumatism in the joints, and unforgiveness, which is something I am guilty of. I really struggle to forgive people, will harden the arteries, harm the liver, and affect the eyesight. So I need to start learning how to forgive. Love your enemies, bless those that curse you, do good to those that hate you, and pray for those who spitefully use you and persecute you. Good will produces a great aura of protection around the one who sends it, and no weapon that is formed against him shall prosper. In other words, love and goodwill destroy the enemies within oneself. There is peace on earth for him who sends good will to man. I really like that. So I'm going to remember that, Try and love my enemies, bless those that curse me, do good things for those that hate me, and pray for those who spitefully use me and persecute me, because goodwill creates like an aura of protection around me, and no weapon that's formed against me shall work. I like that. I'm going to try it. The law of non-resistance. Nothing on earth can resist an absolutely non-resistant person. The Chinese say that water is the most powerful element because it is perfectly non-resistant. It can wear away a rock and sweep away all before it. So Jesus Christ said, resist not evil, for he knew in reality that there is no evil, therefore there's nothing to resist. Evil has come of man's vain imagination or belief in two powers, good and evil. There is an old legend that Adam and Eve ate of the Maya tree of illusion and saw two powers instead of one. Therefore evil is a false law man has made for himself through psychoma or soul sleep. And soul sleep means that a man's soul has been hypnotized by the belief of sin, sickness and death. So that's interesting. That the Adam and Eve story is kind of a myth or something, because I've always kind of believed it. But no, if there's no evil, it's just something that was man-made, then that's good. The sick man has pictured sickness, the poor man poverty, the rich man wealth. People often say, why do little children attract illness when they are too young to even know what it is? I answer that children are sensitive and receptive to the thoughts of others about them and often picture the fears of their parents. Yes, I do understand and agree with that. If you do not run and control your subconscious mind, someone else will run it for you. Mothers often unconsciously attract illness and disaster to their children by continually holding them in thoughts of fear and watching for the symptoms. The man who is centered and established in right thinking, the man who sends out only goodwill to his fellow man, and who is without any fear, cannot be touched or influenced by the negative thoughts of others. Very interesting. So it's about being non-resistant and about sending out good vibes. Yes, okay. So it goes on to say that any sort of resistance is actually hell because it places man in a state of torment. So it's about like not resisting anything and having pure faith that everything's going to be okay, and that is like living in heaven. It's quite a tall order, isn't it? It's quite difficult to do that. Anyway, an example. A woman who required money and who knew of the spiritual law of opulence was thrown continually in a business type way with a man who made her feel very poor. He talked about lack and limitation, and she commenced to catch his his poverty thoughts. So she disliked him and she blamed him for her failures. She knew in order to demonstrate her supply, she must first feel that she had received it. A feeling of opulence must precede its manifestation. it dawned upon her one day that she was resisting the situation and seeing two powers instead of one. So she blessed the man who had made her feel poor and baptized the situation as a success. She affirmed, as there is only one power and that power is God, this man here is here for my good and my prosperity, which is just what he did not seem to be there for. Soon after that, she met through this man a woman who gave her for services rendered several $1,000s, and the man moved to a distant city and faded harmoniously from her life. So that's quite interesting. So if someone comes into your life that is really negative and makes you feel crap, and you're worried that you're catching their bad vibes like catching a cold, it's very tempting to blame them for your failures, but we shouldn't. We should instead act as if we've already received opulence and bless the person that makes you feel negative, even though you won't want to, and then something good will happen and the person who makes you feel negative will just disappear harmoniously from your life. That's quite good. Oh, I love this. Bless your enemy and you rob him of his ammunition. His arrows will be transmuted into blessings. This law is true of nations as well as individuals. Bless a nation, send love and goodwill to every inhabitant, and it is robbed of its power to harm. So yes, we could do that with the current war zones on the planet. We could bless them. If we all did that, maybe the power of our blessings as a collective would stop war or something. I reckon we should try that. Man can only get the right idea about non-resistance through spiritual understanding. Students have often said, I don't want to be a doormat. And I reply, when you use non-resistance with wisdom, no one will ever be able to walk over you. Yep. So non-resistance isn't about being a yes person and just being passive and a doormat. You've got to apply some wisdom with it and then it'll be fine. As long as a man resists a situation, he will have it with him. If he runs away from it, it will run after him. For example, I was unhappy at home. I disliked my mother, who was critical and domineering. So I ran away and I was married. But I married my mother, for my husband was exactly like my mother, and I had the same situation to face again. Agree that the adverse situation is good. Be undisturbed by it, and it falls away of its own weight. The inharmonious situation comes from inharmony within man himself. So yeah, if you're stuck in a situation with someone who is domineering and critical, you need to deal with that situation within yourself and not run away from it, because you'll only find that situation again somewhere else. So I guess it's like an acceptance of, wow, this person who is being domineering and critical is here for my benefit, because they're showing me the type of person that I definitely don't want to be. Thank you for that. Bless it. Send out some goodwill and some positive vibes, and then your situation will change and you'll escape the negativeness. I think that's what it's trying to say. One is often cured of his faults by seeing them in others. Life is a mirror, and we find only ourselves reflected in our associates. Living in the past is a failure method and a violation of spiritual law. The robbers of time are the past and the future. Man should bless the past and forget it if it keeps him in bondage, and bless the future, knowing it has in store for him endless joys, but live fully in the now. Every affirmation must be carefully worded and completely cover the ground. For example, a woman who was in great need made a demand for work. She received a great deal of work, but she was never paid anything. Now she knows to add that she wants wonderful service for wonderful pay. So yeah, lots of food for thought there. And, like there's articles that I've read recently about why do animals not suffer from trauma and PTSD like humans do. And it's along the lines of humans hold on to resentments and bad experiences for longer than is necessary. An animal might be in a life or death situation, and then the animal gets out of that life or death situation and instantly lets it go and starts playing and chilling out and lying down and relaxing and enjoying its happiness again and resettling its nervous system, ready to then be in the right mode for the next life or death situation. I'm not saying that animals can't have trauma, because obviously there's loads of animals in animal shelters that have been traumatized, but it's just not as common as it is with humans, I don't think. So yeah, I do kind of understand this idea of living in the now and not in the past or the future, because that's where the robbers of time live. And when you make an affirmation, make sure it's carefully worded. You don't want to be asking for a job and then end up with a job that you don't get any money for. So I understand that. And I'm gonna pause there, and the next time I start a recording, it's going to be about the law of karma and the law of forgiveness. Thank you for listening.